Chapter 7. A Counter-Revolutionary Incident. One day not long after the traveling struggle, my friend Little Monkey and I were playing with marbles on the cement in front of one of the dormitories. Suddenly, a group of people came running around the corner, right through our game, and disappeared into the alleyway between two houses. We thought it might be another public criticism meeting or a search raid, so we pocketed our marbles and ran after them to see whose family was in trouble this time. There was a big crowd in front of the old dormitory opposite the medical clinic, then being converted into another temporary prison. I pushed my way through. There on the wall, somebody had scratched "Down with Chairman Mao" deeply onto the fresh plaster. The characters glistened wetly under the autumn sun. Men from the Public Security Bureau were taking photographs from all angles and yelling at people to stay behind the chalk line they had drawn to hold back the crowd. I knew it was serious, but I thought it was exciting all the same. As Little Monkey and I walked back, we tried to imagine who had done it. He said it must have been a KMT spy who hadn't been caught yet, but I was sure it was a big landlord. It never occurred to us that anyone but spies and landlords could possibly oppose Chairman Mao. Father was horrified when he came back the evening and heard the news. Counter-revolutionaries like that are really evil. Whoever opposes Chairman Mao must be punished severely, he said. Liang Weiping and I were confident that the culprit would be caught in no time. No one would be willing to help such a criminal hide for long. That evening, at around 9, there came the loud knocking at our door that we had learned meant trouble. We were afraid, of course, but in some strange way, we were already fairly used to such things. So we opened the door, and 3 men wearing dark clothes with red armbands came in. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they looked tired. I recognized one of them as a typesetter named Zheng. Another was a young maintenance worker named Liu. Before the Cultural Revolution, they had been friendly acquaintances of ours. Now they were revolutionary workers, busy putting up posters about intellectuals and party leaders. To me, Zheng was one of the most frightening of the rebel group, for his hairy face gave him a particularly intimidating expression, and his Shaoyang accent made it difficult even for Changshanese to understand him. I had often watched him beating the capitalist roaders. I didn't even know the third man, but later I learned he was a Red Guard from the Hunan Teachers College across the river, on hand to help the Hunan Daily's rebels write the newspaper. This time, instead of seizing my father or opening drawers and boxes, they walked up to me and said, "Let's go." Father was trembling, but Liang Weiping grabbed my hand and said, "No, where do you want to take him?" Liu said, "This question is very serious." "What is it?" "Don't you know that there was a counter-revolutionary incident here this afternoon?" At these words, my family fell silent. There was no way out. I had to go with them. They took me down the stairs of the office building, past a printing shop reeking with paper and ink, and into a dirty basement room. It was empty, but for 3 wooden chairs lined up in a row and another one facing them. A bench with a thermos and 3 teacups, a bare light bulb hanging in the center of the room, and a fan in the corner. The small ventilation window below the ceiling was shut tight, and the fan did little to relieve the dark stuffiness. Zheng took a rope from behind the door and tied me tight to the chair with my arms behind my back. The man I didn't know took out a pen and notebook and waited expectantly. Liu was the first to speak. "Did you see the big demonstration go by the gate of newspaper today?" The demonstration he meant had been one like that which Liang Weiping described to me on the day of Father's traveling struggle. A pre-execution parade that had become common in Changsha. When it passed the Human Daily that morning, I had gone out to watch with everyone else, so I said worriedly, "Yes, I saw it." "Raise your head and look at the slogan on the wall. What does it say?" It was a quotation from Chairman Mao, a big red billboard-sized sign with 8 yellow characters. 坦白从宽，抗拒从严. Leniency to those who confess their crimes, severity to those who refuse. Read it. I read it. Then Zheng asked me, "Do you know why that counter-revolutionary was executed today?" "He was treated with severity because he didn't confess," I replied. "And why were some people on the truck saying, 'Thank you, Chairman Mao'?" "Because they got leniency for confessing their crimes." Zheng smiled and said sarcastically, "Not bad. You know the policy very well." Liu spoke up. "So now you can begin to confess your crime of writing that counter-revolutionary sign." I was very surprised. I could hardly believe they would suspect me. I had thought they wanted me to expose father again, so I answered eagerly, "I didn't do it. I don't know anything about it." Zheng began to interrogate me. "What were you doing at noontime today?" "I was playing." "Where were you playing?" "In the grape arbor in front of the hospital." "What were you doing there?" I remembered that I had been shooting down grapes with a slingshot, but I didn't want to admit it. "Nothing," I said. He slammed his hand down the table. "Nothing?" I was frightened. "What was in your hand?" It seemed they knew everything. "I had a slingshot," I said. "I was using it to knock down some grapes." Zheng became even fiercer. The teacups shook. "You're full of shit. That slingshot was what you used to write that counter-revolutionary slogan with. Your little playmates have already exposed you. A boy playing with a slingshot was seen writing that slogan, and you're the only child in this unit who has one." I trembled. "Yes, I do have a slingshot. It's to hit birds with. I was using it to knock down grapes. I would never do something like that. I did not do it." "You won't admit it?" he shouted. "You'll be sorry. Listen." He pointed up at the ceiling. I could hear thuds and a man's anguished cries. The sounds were always changing. Perhaps several people were being beaten. I heard someone protesting, and then the crash of a chair falling. The whole building became very silent. I was sweating all over. Zheng said, "Raise your head. This thing is also your father's crime. Your father must have told you to do it, because he hates the Cultural Revolution." From then on, they tried to force me to admit that I had done it because of father. My back ached and my wrists were itching and raw when the rope bound them. I squirmed in my seat, but it didn't do any good. The third man, keeping notes, said nastily, "So the rope feels uncomfortable, does it? If you don't like it, why don't you hurry up and confess?" I was exhausted. Many hours had passed. Upstairs, there were the sounds of renewed argument, and Zheng and Liu decided to go see what's going on, leaving me alone with the note-taker. He smoked and didn't ask me anything. Finally, somehow, I nodded off. I awoke to the pain of Zheng shaking me by the hair and laughing. "Oh, so you want to sleep, do you?" Fortunately, the note-taker looked at his watch. "It's getting late." He looked at me. "You're not allowed to tell a single soul what happened tonight. Go home. When we come to get you tomorrow, you'd better be there." I ran home with my remaining strength. As soon as I opened the door, my father and sister hugged me as if they would squeeze the life out of me. "Don't cry," I said. I was a little surprised they were so upset. After all, it had not been as bad as all that. Father asked, "Where did they hit you?" "They didn't hit me." "You probably just don't want to admit it," my sister said, "but I saw you being bitten with my own eyes." I thought this was very strange. Father explained that after the men took me away, he and Liang Weiping were so worried that she went to the office building to find out what was happening. She heard people being beaten upstairs, so she went up and looked through the keyhole of the room the noise was coming from. She saw a man beating someone with a stick as thick as a fist and thought it was me. Running back home, she told Father. They had both been waiting for me, frantically worried ever since. I explained that it must have been someone else because I was downstairs in the basement. "Why did they take you away?" asked Father. "They said I wrote the counter-revolutionary slogan." I had hardly finished my sentence when father grabbed me by both shoulders with all his strength and cried, "What? What? You wrote it? How could you do a counter-revolutionary thing like that? You've harmed not only yourself but our whole family. Why did you want to go and do such a thing like that?" I was crying for the first time that night. No, I did not do it. Father's expression changed in a flash, as if he had been waiting for just these words. He embraced me like a madman. "I believe you. I believe you. I believe you because you are my son. You will never oppose our beloved Chairman Mao. You will never do that kind of evil thing." He looked around nervously. "Good. You must never say you wrote it, no matter what they tell you." At dawn the next day, the note-taker came again to our house. "Let's go," he said. I followed him back to the same building, where he brought me upstairs to a big meeting room. Sitting inside were the other teenage sons of the newspapermen who were being criticized, sons of cradlers, editors, and reporters. The Gong brothers were there, and the son of the press photographer. Most of them were older than I, but one boy was only 9. It was to be a familiar group. In months to come, whenever anything happened in the unit, we were always the suspect. A man from the Public Security Bureau came in, carrying a big bag, and Zhou Sa-wu, the worker who had kicked us out of our office. He gave each of us a piece of paper and a pencil, and ordered us to write down 2 sentences. "Long live our beloved and great leader Chairman Mao, and down with the capitalist roaders." Then he collected our papers and gave them to the policemen. We whispered to each other. They're comparing the handwriting. After a long whispered discussion, they ordered most of us to go, but 5 or 6 of the older boys had to stay behind. They were locked up in the nursery school close to our old primary school, where their fathers were being held. Later, we heard that they were supposed to expose their parents. They didn't come out for nearly a month. Once I passed by, and through the barrel window saw 2 teenage boys handcuffed together, leaning against the wall and turning the rice straw bedding idly with their feet. One of them was the caterer in charge of the printing house, the other the son of senior assistant editor Meng. On the wall was a huge sign: "Leniency to those who confess, severity to those who refuse." No one ever found out who wrote the slogan, but among us children, it was rumored that it was the young son of one of the editors. A boy of only 8 or 9. The strange thing was that it was he who told the rebels that a boy with a slingshot had been playing near the dormitory wall. The difficulty